And we're going to talk about everything else that we haven't talked about that's visual art and some pretty interesting kinds of things we're going to discuss. Now, if you go over to the frame or menu on the left, you'll see what they are. We're stuck here in architecture. We're going to talk about interior design, photography, film and video, animation and game arts, ephemeral arts, fine and applied art. Okay, those are the things we want to kind of be sure that we know about. And then I'll tell you what, read over case study. You'll get some really good ideas about how to proceed and the week two summary before you go to this. Now, I know that's a lot of reading, but I think once you get into it, it ought to be pretty interesting. Okay, architecture. Architecture can go from the very wonderful Greek things like the Parthenon, which has got to be the creme de la creme in terms of architecture as it began in its infancy. This is if you'll click on that little big on the plus sign within the spyglass or the magnifying glass, this is the image that should come up, and it shows this wonderful architectural creation by Titios and Callicrates, the Parthenon. It was done some, I don't know, what, 44, 440 BCE, so it's, 2,000, almost 2,500 years ago. Beautiful thing, and certainly without a lot of the easy ways to build today that we find. But you'll read a little bit or you'll look at this and you'll understand that by these architectures or architects understanding the proportion, for an example, the repetition of these wonderful columns over and over gives this great unity. This building becomes something more than just a place to get in out of the rain, right? And that was the important thing. And it was, after all, a temple. It was dedicated to Athena, and so it had to be just perfect. And they worked hard and they made it that way. But the design, the people who first came together and said, we can do something better, and then went here, that's what the beauty of this piece is. But certainly the symmetry, the proportions, that's what makes it so wonderful. Elements and principles, my friends. Okay? Now you can go on from there and look at some of the other things. Certainly you can move in architecture down uh, through history and see some really wonderful pieces. Um, then they're talking about, or they want to look at interior design and computer imaging. Now you all are probably pretty comfortable with computer imaging. There's lots of it that we can do. Um, in Webliography, and I showed you how to do that before, you can go to week two and you can look at this category and see some images that might make that a little easier. And if you need to pull some of them up or you're interested in looking at them for some of your discussions this week, that's a good place to find them. Okay? And then it goes on to animation and game arts, and I've heard a lot of you talk about animation and game arts. I suspect you know a lot more about that than I do. Um, we all recognize the name Pixar as being a wonderful animation company that gives us all kinds of delightful films. And we're also talking about this stop motion animation. So here's some good stuff about all that. Here's an absolutely beautiful environment done by David Henchy. You'll enjoy that if that's your area to get into. Now, ephemeral arts might be a little bit harder to understand. Basically, that's an art where you actually make something beautiful and wonderful, but it has a little something else. You're looking at food here. So not only does it have to look wonderful, it has to taste wonderful. And what makes it ephemeral is it's gone. You know, you eat it up, it's gone. All right. Performance art, not performing, not actually listening to the music, but performance art in the sense of someone will go in maybe and throw paint on a canvas, and then when they're finished, they have that performance art right there in front of them. Only it isn't really a canvas. They may have just thrown it down on the ground. Uh, Andy Goldsmith's a good person to look at for that. And earthworks, oh my goodness, yes, earthworks are great. I don't know how many of you all are familiar with Spiral Jetty, that great piece by Robert Smithson. Here it is, done some time ago, but still iconographic in terms of, and this is a landmass. This is where he's gone out into the salt lakes and he's created this wonderful spiral path that is in fact a beautiful landscape that is really a piece of sculpture. This is ephemeral. This particular one that a lot of people are trying to preserve, but you know, a change in tide, a flood, a big storm, it's gone. But it's art. You've got a picture of it. You've got that entity, and that's what makes it so ephemeral. It doesn't last forever, right? And then certainly there's this wonderful discussion among all these that you can get into that gives you some ideas about fine and applied art. And that's mostly the difference, okay? There's a fine art, which is a wonderful painting. There's a fine art that's a wonderful design, say, of, we're talking here about the Morris chairs possibly. A wonderful design of a chair that was done some time ago. It's beautiful to look at, and it's something that's functional or applied as well. So again, go into this webliography, look at those pictures, and you'll have some ideas, I think, about where to go with that. Okay? Now, I haven't really read this to you, but I've given you an idea of what you have to look at here. Lots of material. And again, I would sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil, and I would make notes. Write down if you're interested in looking at applied art. Write down William Morris and his chair, and you can go right over there and look at it, and then you have something to say about it, and you know that it is categorized as applied art. You might want to, I don't know, but you might want to, for an example, contrast that particular chair with, say, this piece of architecture. I don't know if this is a question. I don't think it is, but maybe you would be asked to, they're both utilitarian and applied, but one is a large scaled thing. Here we're using some terms from Elements. The scale is very different between a building and a chair. They're both applied in the sense that they're designs that are pleasing but have a function as well. So this is the kind of direction you're probably going to be asked to go to, and certainly understanding what these different kinds of art forms are is good. So go to your notebook, write down the stuff as you go through it. It'll make it a lot easier to remember. Nobody remembers it the first time. And then you have something to refer to when you start doing your writings for this. And do write it down on, if you want to longhand write it and then type it, that's fine. But I would go ahead and put it in a word processing where you can spell check it, proofread it for grammar. Do not do not post it until you have it exactly the way you want it. Then when you post it, you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, how am I going to get it off if there are problems. If that does happen to you, if there are problems and you kind of hit that little posting before you really mean to post it, just be sure you write something, post another one maybe right under it that says alert, don't read this, and we'll kind of pass over that one and hit to the next one. At least I will. Thanks very much for your attention, and good luck on this week. I think it'll be a lot of fun for you, and you're moving forward and learning a whole lot of things.